Hi everyone, my name is Megan Ryan and I decided to choose Ēostre as my goddess for the American Gods presentation. There is disputed claims over how to pronounce her name, so I'm not quite sure if it's Ēostre or Ostra or Easter, so I will just be sticking with Ēostre. The origins of Ēostre actually begin with a Christian guy talking about the pagan traditions surrounding Ēostre and her as a goddess, which is interesting because a pagan tradition you would think would come from a pagan guy telling the story about the pagan traditions he's doing, but not Ēostre. Ēostre, otherwise spelled as Istra or Ostera, is the Germanic goddess of the dawn. Her name translates to dawn or east. Some symbols associated with her include rabbits who can lay eggs, colored eggs, eating rabbit, springtime, and non-Christian or pagan Easter. Modern knowledge of her comes from Bede's book, The Ecclesiastical History of the English Peoples, which is about pre-Christian Anglo-Saxon religious traditions. It's important to remember that Bede himself is a Christian. He is not pagan. He was never pagan. And he did not live at the same time as these pagan people, these pagan Anglo-Saxons who did engage in this supposed Ēostre goddess and her religion. So it is largely disputed whether his source of information can be trusted. Essentially, religious historians argue over whether or not him as a Christian, if he would be able to tell this story about pagan traditions correctly, since he is Christian, coming after the pagans. And at that time, it's thought that the Christians kind of wanted to erase the previous pagan traditions, so a lot of religious historians don't think he's telling the truth, while other religious historians do think he's telling the truth because he gives such a convincing argument for the traditions surrounding Ēostre. Now, there are some myths surrounding Ēostre, the greatest one of all being her ability to transform a bird into a rabbit that can lay eggs, which sounds oddly familiar if you think about it. In 1883, Elliot Stock wrote that originally the hare seems to have been a bird which the ancient Teutonic goddess Ostera transformed into a quadruped. For this reason, the hare, in grateful recollection of its former quality as bird and swift messenger of the spring goddess, is able to lay eggs on her festival at Easter time. In today's society, we celebrate this mythology by celebrating the Easter Bunny, which again is the rabbit who can lay eggs. Although the Easter Bunny isn't directly laying the eggs, it just kind of goes around handing out eggs. We color eggs and we feast on the day of her festival. In American Gods, Neil Gaiman describes her differently. He gives her a voluptuous body in which shadow kind of objectifies. He talks about how she's a curvy young woman with sexualized features, versus what historically she would have been a pure goddess wearing robes with some flowers in her hair. In fact, in American Gods, Shadow explicitly thinks about her thighs rubbing together after she mentions that out loud to both him and Wednesday, which was just kind of weird that they mentioned that, but I believe it has to do with mentioning her fertility, which Gaiman relates her to sexual fertility, and the pagan tradition, on the other hand, relates her to springtime as in natural fertility in plants and animals. In the book, she is seen feasting on deviled eggs, rabbit, and hare. These are all symbols of the food eaten during rituals and feasts in her name, and they're also symbols of like her spiritual companion animal because she transformed the bird into the hare or the rabbit. And she is the goddess or a goddess of replenishment. She replenishes Shadow by cutting him down from the tree that he's hanging on, and she gives him a kiss, which eventually brings him back to life. The best key concepts related to Ēostre are rituals and diaspora. Ritual was present in Ēostre's presentation in American Gods when she first meets Wednesday and Shadow. She is feasting on rabbit, deviled eggs, and other foods, which are items that are related to her and her religion. And so she gains power from these in her book. She also gains power from people celebrating Easter each year and consuming the foods and drinks associated with her festival, as well as engaging in the symbols associated with her festival, such as rabbits and colored eggs, even though the festival has become a Christian tradition in modern times. As for diaspora, Ēostre was a goddess that was developed during Anglo-Saxon England, but her festival, Easter, is celebrated across the globe today. So therefore, her religion and herself, her as a goddess, must have transformed and diffused across the world over the years. Although it might have happened via the Christian tradition because of Easter's Christian rituals tied to, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, as well as the coloring of eggs and the fun side of Easter. They're both kind of tied together. And so Christianity may be the reason that Ēostre's festival has become such a mainstay in so many parts of the globe today. In conclusion, I'd like to reiterate a few things about Ēostre. She's been transformative as a goddess in both pre-Christian times as well as modern times. Her festivities and rituals have been combined with Christian rituals in order to celebrate what we know as Easter today. Easter is the resurrection of Jesus, but it is also about finding colored eggs in the Easter bunny, which is definitely a symbol of Ēostre. Although her origin story, Bede's text, is disputed, her existence throughout the centuries proves her durability as a goddess. She's survived the diaspora from Anglo-Saxon England to across the world today. As well as her festivals and rituals have survived the Christianization of Easter. So yeah, I hope you found learning about Ēostre interesting. I know I certainly did. It's quite interesting to know where the whole Easter bunny with the eggs comes from. Yeah, so thank you for listening.